Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Miles, a son of God and a brother to Jesus, here to represent the kingdom of heaven. In the other dimension, but the one in yourself. Remember that, people. Story time. So I wanted to share this because as a Christian, okay, it's time to start having spiritual discernment, being honest with ourselves, and taking what I would like to call a personal inventory of ourselves. Understand what's coming up within us, okay? Story time, okay? And I really hope that people, I want to get this out in the beginning. I would just really appreciate at least, just hear this full message at the least. I understand maybe some of you guys, you think I'm a heretic and all this different stuff, but just at least hear out this type of message for yourself, because it might be profitable for you too, okay? So, for myself, okay, within my life, I've always been a pretty athletic kid, and I was always talented within that type of field within my life, and I wanted to be fruitful within that aspect, okay? So I'd done sports, throughout my life, and pretty successfully. My kind of two main things that I think that I found the most talent in was track and field and football. Okay. After when I was kind of done with those things, I tried going to college for both sports. I got into just working out because I needed to find something, that filled in that void, and I realized, I had to realize now with some spiritual discernment, well, what void am I trying to fulfill, right? So within working out, seeing that, I had talent of being strong and building muscles too, and I could see that type of development, and it was an exciting thing, right? During that process, I wanted to then become a bodybuilder, right? Now, in each of these different sports and things that I was trying to go for, there was the aspect of I wanted to be, a pro at least in one of these different things, right? And as years gone by, and within my story, obviously, like, I had eventually gotten into problems, obviously, with drugs. I'd stopped working out at that point and had no desire to do those things. All I wanted to do was get high. And then when I gotten clean, though, too, that kind of desire did come back, right? And I got back into that and got even better at, like, working out and all this different stuff, right? Okay. Then I didn't really want to do bodybuilding anymore. Let's get into that story too a little bit. So, when I really wanted to get into bodybuilding, I did have a prayer to God and Jesus, right? And I was like, listen, like, I think this is the thing that I want to do. I want it to be as an avenue, to help out Christians, and to express you guys and express my faith and all this different stuff, right? And there was an interesting experience that happened with that, right? When I said that prayer, I had went to a church. Now, mind you guys, I want you guys to still realize when you're in the faith, they can still speak to you, right? Through people, right? They can do that. I've had that experience, whether it was people, maybe similar to my faith in the church and completely outside of it, right? Like within recovery, right? I've had those moments where I've been in a meeting and I knew that something from what someone said, the Spirit spoke through them, and I knew it, even if it was someone who was not within the same beliefs as me. When you know it, you know it. And let's be real about this, right? This has happened throughout the Bible, right? God spoke through a bush, right? He sends his angels to deliver the message, right? Prophecies, he's giving them the message to tell people things, right? But there's been other aspects outside of it, right? This has been my experience, and I know this for a fact. Well, when I was at this church, when I had prayed about this situation, and I was praying about it a lot, this guy had a message, right, for the day. And the message was, whatever you do it all for the glory of God, right? And within his message, right, he was saying, if you want to be a doctor, whatever you do it all for the glory of God. Whatever you do, if you want to be a teacher, do it all for the glory of God. If you want to be, let's say, I don't remember all the word for word things, but if you want to be a scientist, whatever you do it all for the glory of God. And then he looked at me. He didn't know anything about what was going on with my story. And then he said, even if you want to be a bodybuilder, whatever you do it all for the glory of God. Now, I took that obviously as, okay, this was obviously something, right? So that's when I got into bodybuilding, right? Well, this is why God is awesome too at the same time, right? He's your father, right? And he understands the path that you're going to go on, but he's going to use that to help you, teach you lessons in your life, right? It's just like any other parent too, right? That is willing maybe to accept whatever path you're going to go on. They're like, okay, this is the path, go ahead and go for it, right? Some parents don't like always the path that you want to go on, but I have a father, man, and it's God. And obviously he's using the Holy Spirit, so him and Jesus in that spirit is trying to deliver a message. So, anyways, I realized within that path that it really wasn't for me, right? And so I had lost eventually that desire to get into that, right? But at the same time too, after when I lost that competitive drive, I stopped working out too. And within my process of my story, right, of taking a personal inventory and delving deep, I'd realized what would always bring me to exercise and working out was the spirit of competitiveness, right? Now, let's think about this for a second. Is the spirit of competitiveness really a good thing? Let's play the full scope of it. What does it do at times? Leads to fights, anger, envy, violence, bad words to people. It has that spirit of it when you really think about it. I want you guys to really think about this, right? Now, I'm not saying within your path maybe that there's been also some good that's come from it, right? Not saying that. There's been maybe a form of discipline. God has used these situations too in your life to teach you good things as well, right? Then, within my time, because I didn't learn my lesson necessarily yet, but I was aware of there is some weird stuff within this of what I'm going for. And I had realized too, this isn't all for the glory of God and Jesus, right? So then I eventually got into MMA, or wanted to be in MMA. And I really liked watching UFC and all this different stuff. Within that inventory, anger, more of that welling up of that, and violence, and what would you call it? A superiority complex, and all this different stuff was coming up in me too. It was teaching me still maybe a form of discipline. And mind you, while in this process, I'm trying to rely on them just to be disciplined, get through this stuff. And if those things come up, okay, we'll get through it, it'll be okay, right? Well, the day that I was preparing myself physically and mentally and trying to do it spiritually to get into MMA now. And I was going to try and do this for the glory of God and Jesus, right? Well, the day that I get into the MMA gym, had a beautiful session of jiu-jitsu, all this different stuff, and I got on the heavy bags, was punching, kicking them after the class, blah, blah, blah. I torn my calf actually doing what's called a switch kick, and when I planted my left foot back, I tore my calf. I also have had a previous injury too with one of my other legs of breaking my fibula. But what I've realized, right, is they were stopping me from going down the path of that. Okay? The day too, ironically, when this happened was the day that we had all had become aware, I believe, of COVID. This was like the day. So gyms were gonna shut down anyways, eventually, as we know. I had to go into rehab for my torn calf. And yeah, so during that process, I was going through that, and it was tough, obviously. I was like, man, I was kind of an older person, I would say, to get into MMA anyways. I mean, this was obviously a little over 4 years ago, you know? So, yeah. Then I tried going back to the gym, and I was like, well, I'm going to try and get back to getting in shape and MMA again. But it was like I didn't have the desire to do it anymore, right? Now, I was always so into exercise, but I always knew too that what always drove me into it was that spirit of competitiveness. It's actually something that's not good, that maybe some of you guys need to realize. Now, during that process, right? Let's think about this, right? For all my people who work out, you guys, I've been doing this for a long time, and if any of you guys somehow see me, right? Some of you guys have seen me in the gym and who I was and how disciplined I was, blah, 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 blah. But within that time, right, there was a lot of spiritual things that was happening to me, whether good or really bad. It was like I was consuming, right? You consume music, it gets you amped up and it gets you angry, and you might even listen to music that talks about very inappropriate things and all this different stuff. You're feeling it, man. Sit there and think about this. If you're a Christian too, or if it's just someone who's not, take an inventory of yourself. What is going on when you're doing this stuff, right? Now, let me preface something. Everybody has a different walk, right? I'm not necessarily saying that you just got to stop working out now, right? This stuff might not get to you or bother you, and you might be blessed in that aspect, and like you're just honoring your body like physically for them, and like none of these things are coming up in you. It's coming up for my path. It's coming up for me, right? So yeah, it's been now like over 4 years now since I haven't worked out, and like I've always wondered, I'm like, I've been trying to trust in them, obviously, that they're going to give me the desire to maybe eventually bring me to this, but it still hasn't happened. But then it clicked. I realized that maybe even never, this isn't for me, right? That's why. Maybe it never will be. Maybe I'll never be free from just truly maybe honoring physically my body for health for them in general, because there's too much stuff that comes up in this that's negative, and it does, when I really think about it and take an inventory of myself, it comes out. So for me, what am I willing to do, right? And I'm going to give it to them. I would rather, since now that I'm aware these things are coming up, right? I would rather not be working out and exercising and all this different stuff if it's leading to, the planted seeds of different things that are not good. They're the tares and stuff, and the thorns and thistles, right? Because within that process, it was like I was caring too about other people as well, right? I was caring about what other people think that I look like, and especially like women and stuff, and you want to be like in shape and look good and look healthy and be attractive, blah 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 blah. These are cares of the world. Whoever it is that this is for too, because I can relate to you. Don't think that you're alone. Maybe this is why. Are you willing to sacrifice your body? Meaning letting those things go too, even if you become weak. Maybe you look a little skinny fat, or get a little out of shape or something like that. This is for men and women. Are you willing to do that so that these things don't come up, so that you can bear fruit and have a closer relationship with God and Jesus? Exercise profits little. Doesn't say that there's nothing, but it profits little. And within my little, when I really realized it, only the little was maybe being physically strong, athletic, blah blah blah. But there was just too much tares. There was too much non-bearing fruit and death, right? And that tree gets burned and it's time to start all over. Well, am I gonna go back to that tree again to try and do it? Are you? Whoever it's for, that's for you, because I can relate to you. Don't think that you're alone in that. I admit that now. I'm aware of it now. Take an inventory of yourself, you guys, with even other things within your life. Are there things that are really sprouting up? Stuff that's not good in you, whether it's what you watch or what you do, all this different stuff, right? Whatever you do it all for the glory of God and Jesus, his son. Hope this makes sense to you guys. What are you willing? And if you're not willing, be honest with them and ask them to give that the true desire, the true way to you. You might be taught hard lessons through it, like how I've had, but that's what makes the story actually very beautiful, man. They're not letting you go, right? And eventually, hopefully, they're gonna make you aware of it. But this is why, okay, you guys, you need to know who God and Jesus and the Holy Spirit is, okay? When you understand it, you will spiritually now see it. Your eyes, your ears, your heart will see it. And eventually, they'll maybe even just bless you in general, right? Just because whatever other process that you're going through and you're trying to trust in them in whatever process is going on, and they release that desire from you in general itself. And then you're aware, you're okay, and it's time to just move on and take whatever the other next steps are, right? It's okay if you do let this go. What's more important, right? I'm at a point for me too that I'm willing to not be with anybody, right? Now, I've even thought in my head, hey, if I'm not going to be married, and have children, and honestly, within this world and how it is, I don't really necessarily want to have children within this world, right? Now, I don't 100% maybe know everything scripturally, but I think at least from what my understanding of it is now, so let me preface this, and I could be wrong, but if I'm wrong, it's going to be okay. But when like New Jerusalem comes and there's the reign of 1,000 years, with Yeshua, and God will be there too. Within that 1,000 years, it's like this process of families in the perfectness of all this stuff on earth. Like your family might come within that moment. How much better would that be if the family that you end up having is maybe during that time? Now, let me just preface this, okay? There are some other scriptures that I know that are within it, right? Like, it says like, but I think it's within heaven, but it doesn't, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter for me, right? I'm just willing to let it go, right? Christ, I believe, like within heaven at least, talks about that, there won't be marriage. But I think at least, could be wrong, if the New Jerusalem comes, then that's just when it happens too, within a perfect way, at that time. Like I said, I could be wrong about the understanding, but I'm willing for myself to let even that go. So for men and women, to bear fruit, are you willing to let go of the cares and desires that's coming up in your heart that is a part of the world? You have to remember, you're not of this world. And maybe this is why this stuff is coming up and it's affecting you. And when you have the spirit, right, there's the war of the flesh and the spirit that you're wrestling with. And maybe the reason why you're having the wrestle, right, that lets you know at the least you have the Holy Spirit in you. The Holy Spirit, remember people, it comes from God's Spirit, and He takes His Spirit with Christ, and they indwell in you. Okay? Okay? It's not a third person. John 14. And then, when you realize that, I would hope that would open your hearts and your eyes and your ears to now see who Jesus really is, and who God is, who is the Father. It's just the Father. Okay? You have one God. Okay? That might help you too. Okay? That might get you this type of release of what I have had in trusting in the process of like what is going on in my life, because I'm at the least, right, when I know that, and trying to trust in whatever happens and let them do it through me. There's always these cool steps and processes, and we always have different harvests within our own personal lives, right? And the next step just comes. And sometimes there's harvest, right, where it seems like it's a season that's not really like the best season. It's not. But like the season that I had just recently came from, it didn't seem like it was the best harvest, but what did it produce for me was spiritual discernment and freedom from it. And at the least, what helped me through it was I was having faith in the process of what I've had faith in the process in them, and letting them just move me. Not me trying to move myself, even when it doesn't necessarily seems like it. But when I truly understand and have God and Jesus in my life, and knowing that they're dwelling in me, they can take what seems to be bad and turn it truly into good. I just hope at the least for this, this is fruitful for you. Trust in the process.